Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Adobe Live. My name is Flynn, and I'm joined today by Benjamin Lee, aka Itchban. How are you?
Hey everyone, hi, how you going? Thanks, Flynn. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Uh,
What have you got there, Mike?
yeah,
Hi,
my
I'm like, what's going on? You're bringing something on straight away, like some sort of cameo. Um, it's great to have you here. Hi, everyone in chat. Hey, Mustafa. Hey, Johanna. Hey, Festus. Good morning. Hope you're doing really well over
Festus.
there.
How you going, Festus?
Good man. It's always great to see you. Hope it's a lovely day in New Zealand. It's a wonderful day here in Sydney. Visceral, hello. Yannick, great to see you guys in
Vish, what's
chat.
going on?
Yeah, if you're watching this somewhere else, if you're out there in YouTube land, come over to behance.net/live, join our chat. We're going to have a chilled out editing, Q&A, chat interaction kind of day today. It's Friday. It's a lovely day outside. We're going to chill out with Itchban, so it's going to be great. So Ben, over to you, filmmaker and photographer in Sydney. For those that might not be familiar with your work and what you do, can you give us like the elevator pitch I was going to say, but yeah, that's super lame.
Yeah, I started off as a photographer, but I was a travel photographer, but haven't been doing that much of that lately. But yeah, I can
Yeah.
show you some of my work. So uh, travel around, do a lot of kind of commercial jobs, but travel, lifestyle, adventure, and basically documenting my life. So
Mm.
yeah, this is some of my work. I just came back from a big Japan trip, and apparently I'm a vlogger now. So I've got a vlogging series
Was that
about Japan
intentional?
up on my YouTube now.
Is that like an intentional thing
Uh,
that happened, or was it a happy accident?
no, I wanted to get more used to being in front of the camera. So
Right.
I guess like walking around with a vlogging camera is probably the best, fastest way to go. I don't know
Yeah.
about the best, but yeah. Uh, this is some of my recent work. I shoot a lot of landscapes. I shoot a lot of street. Uh, I make a lot of cinemagraphs here and there, and
Mm.
filmmaker now too. So I guess you could call me a full stack creator. So I
Full
do a
stack
bit of
creator.
everything pretty
I
much.
like it.
Yeah,
Bit
it's a
of
software
everything.
term, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is my work. Also run a podcast too. So I do quite a few things. I run a podcast with Demis. He's also been on this live stream before. So yeah, it's a podcast about creators for creators living the 5 to 9 life.
5 to 9 life.
He's gonna hate me for butchering that,
It's like,
but
dude, that's not the tagline. Come on.
he normally says it. That's why.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have that with our podcast as well. I always do the intro. I've always been doing it. We've been doing it for 5 years now,
Yeah,
and yeah, Matt, my co-host, never says it,
it's
and
just your
he
role.
says, "I'm like, dude, that's my thing. Come on." Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So, what are you focusing on now? Like, obviously, travel photography is such a big part of your life, and obviously,
Yeah.
we can't be traveling right now. So what's going on? What's up?
Well, lucky I filmed the whole month in Japan with the vlogs, so
Mm,
I'm trying to do a weekly upload every week. So I'm trying
mm.
to grow my YouTube channel this year, and yeah, that's it takes like 4 days to edit an episode, so that's pretty much my whole week.
Wow.
And we're up to episode 9, so it's
So
been
is
9 weeks already.
that the 5 to 9 podcast, or is that separate to that on YouTube?
That's separate. So we're also editing that on the side too. So I think my entire week's pretty full. So
So there's
yeah, you should
no
check out
shortage
my
of things to do during this ISO
yeah.
time.
Like luckily, I've had stuff to edit. Otherwise, I don't know what I'd be doing at home, to be honest. But
Mm,
life's been pretty good.
yeah.
How's everyone
Um,
in the chat?
yeah. How are you going in chat? Yeah,
If you have
Japan.
any questions, feel free to ask. Today, we're mostly going to be doing a Lightroom focused live stream. But yeah, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat.
Yeah, and so I'll just kind of remind anyone that might be new to the kind of format that we will typically do. We got a little Q&A buzzer up here that I'll start soon, and basically that just kind of gives us a nice little break in the middle where we can focus on kind of those bigger meaning of life questions. And then, but that don't let that stop you asking questions as we go throughout. Just kind of want to focus as much on process. What are you doing? Why are you
Yeah.
using Lightroom Classic? All sorts of questions like that as we're going along. Ben's going to show us some edits and things like that. But yeah, we do have a little bit of a break in the middle, so that's what is going on there. But yeah, I'll kind of continue to hand over to you to kind of take it away and give us an idea of what we might do today.
So I'm going to start off with workflow. So just the basic stuff. First thing is hardware, which is, I guess, yeah, this is how I'll shoot a photo and then they'll go to a working drive, which is usually an SSD, which is like that, the bigger hard drives like that. So I would highly recommend, if you can save up. They're quite expensive, but they're super fast, and you basically only need one pretty much. So I have a 2 terabyte one, which I work off. And yeah, I built this a while back, 2014 and 15. I accidentally deleted a whole bunch of photos by accident. So I had to try and find a way to make sure that didn't happen again. So this was
tell us about
pretty
that.
much
So
where
what exactly happened? Because that's, I think a lot of people in chat can relate to that, like losing. Like I've certainly, especially back in the day before autosave, I would like not save, a couple of hours of work, or maybe I've saved a version of a project incorrectly, but you lost tons and tons of photos.
2 years worth of photos. 2014 and 15 is missing from my archives, but I was overseas in New York, and I needed to clear room for the stuff I was shooting there. So I thought I had it double backed up, and I was like, whatever, I just deleted it. I cleared the whole hard drive, and apparently I didn't have a backup of it. But I had a look at my Lightroom catalog. So I don't know if you can see it. That's how many photos I deleted. The 19,000 from 2014 and 18,000.
That's so brutal to see, like the year. Like I just lost 2014 to 2015, and the little question mark, just like questioning your choices. It's very cruel.
Yeah. Like I was just starting photography back then, so the photos weren't that great. So I'm not that distraught, but every time I share this story on my Instagram or social, I get a whole bunch of DMs of people relating and how they deleted their stuff. And I think file management isn't that an attractive thing to keep on top of.
Right.
Like I'd rather be showing you photos and stuff, but I think this is super important. So once you nail down a workflow and you stick to it, hopefully you won't lose any photos like I did.
Cool. I love it.
2 years
like
missing in
like a PSA. Like I love this learn from my mistake. It's great.
Yeah. Like you thank me later. Or I guess if you don't lose photos, then you just forget about me. But that's a good thing. So basically, this is how I stored my photos. It's just a whole bunch of like hard drives that you buy from like JB Hi-Fi or whatever. And I tried to double back everything up, but yeah, that process fails here and there. So I wanted to find a better solution. So I got it's a NAS. Don't quote me on network. It's pretty much a storage box, right? So there's
Is it like
there's
RAID?
four.
Is it like a RAID style storage?
Yeah, so it's a NAS and it's also a RAID. So the NAS part stands for it's a network drive, so you can access it from the internet pretty much. So when I'm traveling overseas and say a client wants a photo to license for a magazine cover, that's happened before. Like I was on a bullet train in Japan, and then I just got online and downloaded it to my laptop from my NAS, which is all the way back in Sydney. And then I could just, it's pretty handy having a connection, especially if you travel a lot. So it's made up of 4 hard drives, which are these things, right? And so that's about 40 terabytes. And it's set up in a RAID configuration. So what that does is it's basically halves, or depending on what configuration you go with, it basically halves your total amount. So 40 terabytes becomes 20.
Yeah.
But what that does is if one of them fails, then the other 3 can rebuild that lost hard drive. So that's one layer of protection. So in case hard drives will fail. So what these are, it's basically spinning. Do you guys remember, like you remember CD discs and they're like this spinning discs. A lot of people won't know what.
Thanks for that. I remember floppy drives and everything, 3.5 everything. So I go way back. Yeah, I remember CDs. I remember when CDs were new and spinning disc drives were new. So yeah, we're cool. I get it.
But yeah, there's spinning discs inside these things, and eventually that will break. And So
I've definitely had that
on
happen
top of that,
to myself. Like I've had that happen with just a normal hard drive, and I didn't even know what was on that
mm,
hard drive because I did the same thing. I
oh,
just had
that's not
a
good.
handful of hard drives. They're all a little bit different, but they just get old,
Yeah,
and you think it's going to be
yeah.
safe, and then you plug it in, and it just won't read. And they're very
They're mechanical
difficult
things
to,
that
yeah,
they cost thousands of dollars.
yeah,
You give it to someone to recover your files, it costs thousands of dollars, and they might not be able to recover much
yeah,
at all.
yeah,
Maybe they can get it
exactly,
all, but
yeah,
yeah, if you drop it. But
mm,
basically, that's this is like a dirty diagram of how I do it. So I'll shoot, and then I'll move it. I'll back it up onto my working drive, so
mm,
SSDs and just like portables, and from there I'll edit straight from the computer. So with my SSD, it's quite fast,
mm.
right? And then when I'm done with like those edits, say I've edited them all and I'm onto the next project or whatever, then I'll move those files onto the NAS.
When you get home,
Yeah,
right? You're
so
not carrying that cube around.
oh no, I know some people who do though. Like on bigger
Really?
productions, they carry a whole network.
Oh my god.
But no, thank you. Yeah, I can carry like two or three of these, and it's already enough. So,
That's plenty. Yeah. Cool.
but yeah, so from there, that's
Can I just
creepy what
ask,
we're gonna do. So
what's
from
the
there,
travel laptop that you were using?
uh, these photos are from like a 2-year-old article. So yeah, that's a Surface. I'm using a MacBook at the moment.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah,
Cool.
nice and slim. But yeah, so from there, this part, I'll import it into Lightroom. So we can go into that workflow now.
Cool. We just have a couple of questions just before we jump in, if that's cool.
Hey,
Um,
go for it.
One was, do you use a drone? And I think we just saw a drone down there in
Yep.
its collapsed state. So maybe
Yeah, yeah.
how often will you use a drone?
I'll bring it depending on where I'm going. So if I'm just going to Tokyo, for example, you can't fly in Tokyo. So if I know I'm not going to leave Tokyo, I won't bring the drone. But yeah, I bring it with me everywhere. It's a tool. It's like a ladder for a plumber, or maybe not a plumber, but yeah, it's a tool. So I think people are a bit afraid to shoot drone photos because they have become a bit cliche. But
Right.
I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, cool. And that's what someone was asking as well. What's the structure in the water of that Japanese photo? We might get to editing that today, so you might want to talk about that in more detail. But
The
what is
structure.
the? Yeah, we saw it on your feed, I think.
Uh, yeah, we can
So I'm
chat
making you
about
jump
it.
around, but I missed the
Right,
question.
gotcha.
Yeah, that one.
So it's a Torii gate. They're found all over Japan. So
Mm,
it's a spiritual gate that separates the normal life from the spiritual. So you see them in front of temples and like
mm,
kind of spiritual places. So yeah, this one is a special one. This one's near Kyoto, which it's in the middle of a lake. So
mm.
I've actually seen people jet ski through that thing. But
Oh wow.
yeah, they're pretty cool. They're very symbolic of Japan, and yeah, I like taking photos of them. I've been everywhere and taken photos of all. I took for this one, which was in the freezing, icy cold sea up north in Hokkaido, and
Mm,
they're basically everywhere in Japan. There are some cool ones.
yeah.
Hope that answers it. But
Cool.
yeah, so I think this is my workflow for the workload that I do. So I don't think this will apply to everyone. Maybe you only take photos like on the weekends, and this might be a little too much for you, which is fine. But
Mm,
yeah, if you have your workflow that's different from mine, you can share it in the comments. I'd like to know what you do. But basically, I like to import through Finder or whatever, because I'll import all. I just drag and drop so I can see where things are going, because I shoot a lot of video too, and sometimes if I import with Lightroom,
mm.
there are new video codecs that aren't recognized and they don't copy over. So
Right.
I'll import them through Finder, and some people use Bridge, which I haven't touched quite yet, but yeah, I like seeing drag and drop. But
Mm,
once that's there, then I'll go and I'll import the folder that from. It's quite simple. I'll add, and yeah. As far as like folder structure, I'll share mine. I haven't been keeping up with it. Some people are going to shake their heads at me, which I understand. But
Hmm.
uh, all right, so this is my file structure. I go year, and then month, and then these are folders. Sorry, so the folder will be
Can we
say
bring the type up
2019.
just a little bit bigger? It might be a bit hard to read. Or
All
just
right,
increase the size of the, yeah, that's awesome. Cool.
and
Perfect.
this seems to work for me. So I'll go year, and then inside that it'll be the months. I like to put the number there. It's just easier to find, right? And
Mm.
inside each month, yeah, there'll be the date and a brief description. And inside of that, because I shoot with multiple cameras, so I have like 2 cameras plus a drone, they'll
Right.
be in all separate folders. So this works well because I can click the month, for example, in Lightroom, and then it'll show me all the photos for that month, and
Mm.
then I can go into individual days, and it works for me so far. So I guess if you don't shoot as much as me, you should probably still follow some kind of format similar to this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll import it. Then sometimes on trips I'll do by day because I don't know, mentally that's how I remember what I did and where I was.
Mm.
So my last trip was 28 days. So there's quite a bit. So
Wow.
yeah, import it all. And just to take note, this panel is a representation of where your files actually are. So if you move a photo like this and you drag it into day 2, for example, it'll move the actual file in the folder. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's always good to know, because if you're gonna move photos in Finder, for example, Lightroom won't know that you did it, and then you get a question mark. So
Mm.
yeah, for example, question marks look like that. I don't know if you can see, but these are hard drives I don't have connected at the moment, so that's why they're grayed out. But
Right.
yeah,
Mm.
I'll import all the files and folders, and this is how it looks. I've spoken about burst shooting on this live stream before, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll shoot a lot of photos, and it takes a while to color everything down. So some tips for that. My system, our flag, which is the tilde key under escape. That's the hotkey, right? So if you can
Right.
see
So
over here, there's like
next to
flags.
one and below escape, the little zoop, little
Yeah,
tilde.
that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'll hit it. Uh, I'll flag each photo that I like that I might want to edit, for example, for a day, and then you click the filter. So these are all my selects for that day. So Japan, day 1, all my selects. There's this many. There's 56 selects out of 422.
Wow.
But yeah, I'll usually go back and I definitely miss stuff from here to time to time. So I'll go back and I'll go through each photo. But one trick for that to make it a bit faster, if you have caps lock on and then you flag a photo, it'll automatically move to the next. So yeah,
Nice.
it's pretty handy. So if you don't know why it's moving to the next, get caps lock off. But another tip that I use quite often actually is it's called top over here, quick collection. If I'm editing a batch of photos, say for tonight's post or whatever, or like for a project that I need to do, so you can create these temporary quick collections. Currently, I don't have anything in there at the moment, but if you hover over here, I can add this photo to a quick collection by pressing this circle thing.
Yeah.
Yep, so I'll just add a few now. The shortcut is B. So you can just add a whole bunch that you might want to do for today.
Cool.
And they all show up here.
Just had a couple of
I use that quite a
questions for some of the things you've been mentioning. So Jan was asking, is it just my system or can the Lightroom UI and scrolling be laggy sometimes? Do you get that at all?
Depends how many. I think my computer's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's faster to view photos when you're in library mode. So if you're trying to make selects in develop mode, which you can still flag photos and stuff, but because you're in develop mode, it tries to load the actual full res file. So
Right.
if I hold on to I don't know if this is going to lag it on the stream, but if I hold onto an arrow key, it's much slower than if I were to do it in library mode, which is there.
Right.
So G for library mode and D for develop. Develops when you actually want to go edit. So if you look on the right side, there's the panel, which we'll get to soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on a video right now, so that's why it's blank. But yeah, we'll talk about each different panel in the editing panel soon.
Editing bit. We'll get to that. Cool. There was another question as well. Yusef was saying, I always accidentally get into soft proofing mode. I'm not sure what it is. How do I get myself out?
I accidentally press it all the time too. I think it's there's a button. I've forgotten.
It's a very specific question.
Yeah, like when I'm editing and you accidentally hit the button and it goes into soft proofing, but I think you can turn it off. Yeah, we can Google it and find out. Like every time I press it, I have to Google it and figure out how to turn it off. But there's a button.
There's a button.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Soft proofing's to like it changes the background of the photo, because I think the background, the color of the background, and the brightness of the background of the photo makes a big difference to how the actual photo is. If I edit, you can change it here. If you right click, I'm in library mode. If you click here, yeah, you can go white, medium gray, or black. So with dark mode on Instagram, for example, it completely changes how photos look. Like I've been editing a lot brighter, I've noticed, since I moved to dark mode.
Really?
And yeah, because like it just everything looks darker. So as you're editing, and then when you put, I think some people are still on like not dark mode on Instagram, so they'll see it differently to how you see it. It completely changes like how it looks. I think when you compare, I think it's just a perspective thing of like what's next to your photo. But
yeah, it makes sense. But it's interesting that you're editing, that you might be editing your, like that's dictating in your edits of your photos in that way.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking, oh, well, there's a lot more people using darkroom. I need to kind of, do you think that I need to kind of make this work for dark and light? Like, is it impacting your thought process in any way with your colorization?
I think you just, when I just don't notice. So if I'm in dark mode, I was in dark mode for a few months when it first came out, because it's like, it looks all nice and new, right? Yeah. But when I switched back to the other mode, I was like, oh, I'm editing this it's very different. Like it's not bright enough, or it's too bright, sorry. And yeah, I think it's just, you need to be aware of like what the background is you're editing on. It makes a big difference. So medium gray works for me. Yeah, I think it's a comfortable kind of middle ground, I guess. But yeah, you should keep an eye on that.
Should let you know that TK and Jam Tuna, I'm pretty sure that's Jam Tuna in the chat. Say hello. And Tim wants to know where your beard's at.
It started getting scruffy, so I had to. Yeah, I didn't want to
shave it for the stream. Did you shave it for us?
Yeah, I did. It looked kind of crazy. I jumped on a few Zoom calls with friends, and they thought I had like a face filter on.
Awesome.
It was longest I've ever left it. But wow, you should check out Tim TK North. So I've traveled with him quite a few times, and he was with us in Adobe Max, but he's grown a bit of a seedy mustache. It's not even a bit, it's quite seedy. But yeah, keep growing it, TK. Yeah, so there's the ratings. You can give photos stars. I don't really use it that often. You just press the number on the keyboard, so 1 to 5. It's quite simple. So 1 star. And then you can separate, like if you have different categories, depending on what you're doing, maybe you can star things 1, and like photos that you need to give to someone else, you can star like 3 or whatever. But I don't really use it that often. Yeah, I'll use it for time lapses, which is another process that we can talk about another time. But yeah, if you have any questions about my workflow, if your workflow is different to mine, I'd like to know, because I don't think mine's perfected. It works for me so far, but yeah, I could always learn new things.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all learning all the time.
Yeah, you find out new things all the time, and they add features, and then it makes a big difference. But so far, everything's working all right. There's also another tip. So you can hide photos in sub. Sorry, there you go. You can hide photos in subfolders. So wait, I think I think it's under here. Yeah, so right now I've got it so I see everything inside the folder, but you can also turn it off. Show photos in subfolders, right? So sometimes I have a whole bunch of photos. I'll have EOS R, for example, which is my main camera, but then I also create another folder inside of that, which is like a sequence, for example, my time-lapse sequence. And if you're just looking for a certain photo, you can find stuff a lot quicker that way. I can show you an example. So we'll talk about this photo later, but I've separated this sequence, which I made into a panorama. A quick way, I'm in the entire folder. Like, so these are all my Japan photos, right? It's because I'm in the top level folder. So if I want to go to a specific, like find out where the actual photo is, you right click it. You can either show in Finder, which will open a Finder box and show you the actual file, or you go to folder in library. So I use that quite often. Right. So as you can see here, A1, EOS R, and then I've got a subfolder, which is for today, actually, I made it.
So we use that for your bursts, like, because you talk about burst photography quite a bit. I'm sure it'll come up again. And like, say you take 20, say you take 25 shots or something of something. Will you immediately put all of them into a subfolder like this, or will you only put one in? And
no.
then,
I'd have like 10,000 folders if that was the case. Like, I put this one specifically because this is a set of panoramic shots, right? So I'm going to stitch all these into one big photo later. So I separate that, and I also do it for time lapses. So I'll have a time lapse sequence, for example, and it's in the same folder. And when I click the folder above it, I can still see it. But say if I want to work on this or show you one thing, for example, then I can just go to that. And yeah, it's a good way of organizing your photos.
And do you use collections much? It's a question from Tim.
Sometimes, like, so collections, I don't use it often. I use it when, like, say we go on a trip with 2 or 3 other people, and at the end of the trip, we'll share photos of each other and anything else. So I'll create a collections. So this was for our last live stream. So I created a collection. Yep. I didn't want to actually create a new. If I did it up here, it would actually create a new folder in my hard drive, which I didn't want to happen. So collections is a virtual way of doing that. So there's also smart collections, which you can add filters and that kind of stuff.
Act a little bit more like a shortcut,
virtual
to the actual file in that way.
Yeah, it's the same as a folder, but it's virtual. Yeah. So it doesn't actually, well, I guess it's all virtual, but it doesn't actually create a folder in your hard drive, which can be quite confusing. So I'll create a collection, and then I'll drag all the photos that I took of Tim, and I'll shove that into there. So then I can export it a little easier. But smart collections we can get into. So you can use filters, and it'll automatically pick, like, say, all the photos you colored red, for example, or there's a lot of attributes that you can go off. Yep. And searching for photos, if you see here, you can there's a lot of parameters that you can put into search for photos. So over here, you can type in a file name, for example. Like, I can type in extensions. So if I'm looking for photos taken on a Sony, I know the extension .cr3 is Canon, so I know that. And .dng for me would be the drone photos. So that's how I can search for things. There's a whole bunch of attributes you can use to filter your photos. You can even go to here. So year, camera, lens. And it's a quick way to find your photos.
And that's just all saved in the metadata of when you take a photo, right? Like, all that kind of info is within the image itself.
Yeah. So these are all 35mm photos that I've got. It's quite handy to see.
Pretty cool.
You see the number over here, and you can see how many photos you've taken with which lens, and it gives you an idea of, like, the trends that you like this lens a lot more than the other lens, or if you see, like, a big variance, I don't know, maybe you can use that information to go and use another lens a bit more next time. Or I've noticed because of Instagram, I shoot a lot of verticals, and there's also a parameter that lets you check the portrait versus landscape orientation. So yeah, I think I don't even want to show it. I think it's like probably, if I had to guess, like 70% to 30% verticals versus portraits, but everything is consumed on smartphones these days, so I guess it's okay. But yeah, remember to take yeah, if you have time, do both. Do portrait and landscape.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, yeah, do you often take both portrait and landscape? Because I think even for this, like, and for your website and for other things, like 16:9 horizontal, landscape is really what you need. And in other cases, obviously with Instagram feed and also with the stories and everything, it's completely opposite. It's vertical.
I can show you. So I think from a photography standpoint, some photos are meant to be vertical, some are meant to be landscape, and then there's the category where you can be both, right? But for this one, for example, I think I would have spewed a lot if I didn't take a landscape, because I often forget, and then I can show you how it looks, right? So it's 4:5 for Instagram, but if I were to crop it to, say, use as a desktop wallpaper, for example, I guess it's okay.
That one kind of works.
Terrible. Well, like, I don't like that. I like this photo because of this part. So there's like leading lines of like the car trails that lead up to the character, which is my friend Dan. Shout out Dan. But I did take a. So just undo that. There you go. All right. So I did take a landscape version, which I'm currently using as my wallpaper.
Yep.
So yeah, there are different uses. I think you can easily forget and just shoot a lot of verticals, because if you're posting a lot to social media, but like sometimes a client will ask for like a landscape version and you have to crop in. Actually, it's happened to me a few times for a magazine cover. They asked for, they want the high res version, and I had to crop into it because it was the wrong orientation.
Right.
And when I sent it to them, they were like, the file resolution is not big enough. That was for the opposite, so landscape into portrait, because magazines are vertical.
There's a question.
And I didn't.
Oh, sorry. You go.
Sorry. Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
I didn't make the cover because of that. So
right.
That kind of sucks. But
yeah. There's a question about, why do you use the old Lightroom when there's a new Lightroom?
Yeah. So I like using this one. I've got so many catalogs. I can show you. I've just been using it for a while, and I should shift over. When it first came out, it was missing a few features, but since then they've built up. Like, it's pretty much on par now. So yeah, I've got this many catalogs, and I've just continued to use it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, the new one's quite good because you can use, like, it makes it a lot easier to go from desktop to mobile, which is a big part of my workflow. But yeah, I need to move over. It's definitely something I need to do.
On the list.
Yeah, I need to organize all my files too. I had a look yesterday to prepare for this live stream, and I was like, oh, I haven't looked at this in a while because I haven't been out taking photos. I have a lot of dead links because I was midway reorganizing all my photos, and then I went on a trip, and it just never got done. But
oh man.
Yeah, so that's how I go through all my photos and make selects, and I have a lot, so it takes a while to kind of edit. I know some wedding photographers who like to only import their selects, so they'll use something like Adobe Bridge, and they'll only import the photos that they're going to edit to keep their library size down.
Yeah.
But I'm a big advocate of not deleting your photos, because you never know when, like, I'll go through and I'll find photos like years later that I missed the first go.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're a wedding photographer and you're working with that volume of photos and the turnaround's so quick and demanding, that you need to be more efficient, I guess. But
yeah, well, I suppose at a time like now, it's really good to have lots of files around, right? Like, because you can't go out and take new shots anyway, so you probably want to, like,
I've got
go through
People
the
think I live in
archive?
Japan because I post so many Japanese photos, and
Are you having anyone
yeah,
being
I've got a
like,
lot
"Hey,
of
dude, like,
questions.
what are you doing traveling right now?" Have you had any questions about that? Like at the
Yeah,
beginning?
they want to know where I am, and
Yeah.
when I posted about this live stream, no one knew which time zone because I guess it's hard to track where I am. But
Yeah.
I'm back in Sydney, if
Mhm.
anyone's wondering. Yeah. So how are we going for time? We can move
So
on to
yeah,
some edits.
cool. Yeah, great. There's a
Do you
question.
have any questions?
James is asking, do you
Yeah.
pay attention to the histogram when editing? I assume we'll get to that as we're going along.
Oh yeah. All right. So we're in the develop mode now. So this is where we're going to be working on the edit. If it helps, you can get rid of these panels. I usually just keep them open. I'm using a 27-inch monitor. I usually have two of them running, so I'm not lacking in space or whatever. But you can. I see people do this, which I guess
Just to
isn't
give
that
them more.
beneficial for a vertical photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can like close all the panels and just keep this open, for example. It's kind of pointless with like a vertical photo, but yeah. Let me bring them back up. So histogram. If you expose it correctly, I feel like I don't really pay too much attention to it. But for this photo, for example, right, I wanted to underexpose the photo, which you can tell over here. There's more that's shifted on the left side, which shadows are on your left and highlights on your right. And it's darker because I wanted to keep save the highlight information. So if I were to shoot it a lot brighter and even, you see how the histograms all spread out nice and evenly, you might lose some highlight detail.
Yeah.
And that was the more important part of this photo for me, for example.
So when you say you lose it, like it's like blown out, so they just kind of turn into all white pixels in that case because they're so bright.
All right. Well, so always I'll try to shoot raw. So raw files are a lot bigger, and it's pretty much exactly what your camera sensor reads, and yeah, it gives you a lot more flexibility. So if I shot it like this, for example, I'm pretty sure in like Lightroom I could save it. If it was a JPEG, you probably wouldn't be able to save it because like the highlights would be lost for sure. It'll just be like white pixels, and you can tell by how far it's leaning. So if I shot it like this, there are still highlights that are hitting the far right side, right? So that would probably be here and here, and it's lost information. So in a JPEG, if you try to bring it back, it probably wouldn't look very good. Yeah, see there's another spot here that's really bright. One way you can tell in Lightroom is you turn on the clipping. So for example, if I shot this photo like this, right, and I had the clipping on, the red parts are where there's no information. It's all white, right? It's pure white and it's clipping. So blue, if I were to go the opposite side, just say, if I shot it like that, for example, right? If you turn the clipping mask on, this is all the areas where there's no information. So it's quite handy to have on if you're not sure.
Can you show us exactly where you turn the clipping mask on for those that may have missed it, including myself?
Yeah. So for example, if I shot it like this, you'd want to check the shadow clipping mask, the dark clipping mask. So top right, the histogram, there's like the top left of it will be shadows and the top right will be highlights. There's a hotkey that I keep forgetting which it is. So to turn it on, I just click it. Yeah.
Cool.
I usually turn it off. I'd never have it on because like if you're editing it, it's kind of strange to have like, looks like something's wrong with your image. So yeah, if you've accidentally pressed the hotkey and you're wondering why your photos are all like blue or red, that's probably why.
That's why.
But we can go through this panel just quickly. So everyone has different like workflows. I think you can actually rearrange these panels, but I haven't. Like, I've been editing for years, so I just leave it as it is. But top to bottom, like first thing I'll do is I'll crop an image for. Yeah, it just helps me focus on what I'm doing. So only the areas that I'm working on. So, for example, this one went to Instagram. I'm pressing R for crop. Brings up this grid. This grid A tip, you can press O and it changes like the guidelines. So I don't know. There's all these different theories and like
Do you ever use the
rule of thirds.
Fibonacci spiral?
Is that a
One?
thing? I feel like someone just made that correlation. They're like, okay, right, this is the thing now.
Yeah, I'm
Does it
slightly
make a photo
skeptical.
better?
It
I
comes
don't
up
know.
in design a lot. I'm slightly
Yeah.
skeptical of the
Well, like
practicalities.
I'm sure it happens in nature. You see all the flowers with like the Fibonacci patterns, and like
Right.
those aren't mistakes, right? But does it make a photo better? I'm not sure. I don't even know this thing. Like basically these special kind of grids, you want for an interesting composition, you want like subjects and kind of interest points to lie on the intersections of the lines. So I've never used this one. This is like this rule of thirds, but like a bit cropped in, I guess. Is this this Fibonacci?
That's Fibonacci right there.
I've also seen it in like lines and stuff. I don't even know what that is, but I keep it on this one. This one's just you can see if your lines are straight. Demis will hate me because I usually leave my photos like slightly off just by a little bit. Demis, which has been on the podcast, is a photographer, but he's also an architect, and he gets so annoyed when like little lines and stuff aren't straight.
Wait, so you said you'll sometimes leave them a little bit not straight.
Yeah,
Why
I
is
feel
that?
like I like embracing imperfection sometimes. I think there's a lot of beauty in imperfection. Sometimes I miss it too. I'm not gonna lie, but general tip you can use this to see if your horizon line's straight. So let's find a photo with a horizon. This one isn't as clear, but basically the horizon's there, and unless you have a reason for doing it, maybe I don't know, you want the photo to feel off balance or whatever, then you leave it like that. But it always, even if people don't know this rule or like this guideline, it always helps to have it.
Yeah.
It feels subconsciously it feels a lot better when it's like things are straight and level, unless you're trying to put people off on purpose, I guess. But yeah, hey, I think it's just a guideline. If you want to just do whatever you want,
Yeah.
rules are
Unless you
meant
want
to
to
be
really
broken,
annoy
right?
Demis.
Yeah, something like this, for example, he would. It's I didn't shoot it like correctly because this was like I shot it through a train door which opened, and I only had a few seconds to shoot it, so I didn't have time to line the camera up perfectly. But you can fix that. If you were to rotate it and stuff, it still wouldn't be fixed completely because you can see this line is like leaning in and this is kind of straight. So you can fix that, which we'll go through later, which is in this panel, transform. So yeah,
Is that from your
we'll
lens
get back to
or something else?
So to shoot a perfect image, which Demis would approve, you have to be perfectly aligned. So if your camera's like tilted forward a bit, there's distortion in the lens, and the lines won't be straight. See, this line's running a bit to the left, and this line's a bit, I think it's tilted a little bit. This one looks relatively straight. So let's see if we can test it now. Let's see if it fixes it. There's auto modes, which I use a lot, and yeah, it's not bad. There's still lines that I don't know if that's the actual door that's kind of curved or whatever, but autos are usually pretty good like mode to go to. That or full. So let's see how full, not so much. And then you can go manual, which we can do a bit later. But yeah,
Nice.
Let me get back to. I can pick any photo pretty much.
I'll just give everyone a bit of an update. So we got 10 minutes left until our kind of bigger Q&A. I've seen a couple of questions in there, which we'll ask in the break, I think, just so we can keep moving along. And if you're over on YouTube, jump over to behance.net/live to ask questions. You can join in. You've got plenty of time to come in, log in, and ask us questions there. So that's where we can see the comments.
Yeah, come say hi. All right, so just to quickly go through the panel, you have your filters, radial filters. So that's the red eye correction, gradient, which we'll get into, the radial. I use these two a lot. Brush, not so much. It takes more time. So depending on if I want to be really accurate, I use that one. This is the spot removal tool. and this one's the crop, which you should press R. I always have, I don't know if you can see, one hand on the keyboard, one on the mouse. I've seen some people edit with like just the mouse, and it's so much slower. You should use the keyboard shortcuts.
It's all about the shortcuts, right? You got to learn those shortcuts.
Yeah, that's how you tell. But yeah, you can do a lot more things at the same time. But all right, so I'll start here. I'll fix the white balance, and from there, these are the general kind of. They're pretty simple. You've seen them in all editing tools by now, right? So white balance is pretty important to kind of get right at the start after you crop. And I'll come down usually to the transform panel. So the first thing I'll do, as I mentioned before, would be to crop, and then I'll fix the distortion. And from there, after that's done, then I'll move on to fixing the colors and the exposure. So yeah, crop and then fix the lines with the transform panel, and then I'll come into the tone curve. So I have some presets. I basically add a S-curve quite often to add a bit of contrast to the photo. Depending on which photo it is, like how many shadows, how much shadows and how much highlights there is, there'll be different levels of S. But yeah, generally that's where I start. And I don't know if tone curve's quite important. I think if you're starting, you should definitely dig into this. And yeah, I'll show you. So that's tone curve 1, sorry. And then I'll move to my second preset, which is a bit stronger for the fade. It lifts up the shadow, as you can see over here. And then the third one is more, it lifts it quite up, a bit higher.
You made all these yourself?
Yeah, so you can, it's quite easy. I feel like if you use the same tone curve to start off with, your photos will be more consistent. So people usually save presets as a base. So I have a lot of, on the left side here. Yeah, ignore that one for a second. All right, so I have tone curve, I have level, noise reduction, I have sharpening, and split toning. So I have a few certain things that I use often, and I use the same value. So I'll save that as a preset. It's quite easy. It'll help bring consistency to your photos. So right click here at presets. You're in the develop panel at the moment.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Why is consistency important? Like, in terms of like, you know, could you shoot in one sort of style one day and then your next photo be in a completely different style, or why do you think? Yeah, why do you think consistency is important?
Well, first I'll flick over to sorry, my Instagram. First, I think like when people look at your body of work in a overall kind of grid like this, if you edit the reds the same way and you edit like your blues the same way, I think that it helps to build a consistency and a consistent style. Like I've been editing for like 5-6 years now, so I kind of gravitate to editing my blues the same way now anyway.
Right.
But I think you should look at the photo and see what the photo needs first, and then decide if you want to edit in a consistent style or not. But people always ask, like, how do you find consistency in your photos and your editing style? And it comes with experience. But yeah, you can create presets to kind of speed that along.
That's cool.
You might change your style after a certain time. Maybe you don't like this blue anymore and you want to shift to whatever. And yeah, you can just adjust as you go. But presets, press the plus button, create preset. All right, so here it'll ask you which one you want to save. So if I'm just creating like a tone curve preset, for example, I'll click only that one, and then I'll name it S tone curve, whatever you want to name it. But yeah, that's how I save individual kind of settings for different things. But yeah.
Cool, thanks for showing.
All right, let's get into actual editing. We got how long before our break?
5 minutes.
All right. Well, I can run you through the photos that we can.
I mean, we can start. We could start the edit and just come back. It's just a kind of nice time to kind of get to some of the questions that have come up and some of the topic areas that have come up in chat, sort of in the first half. But you know, we can always start and then jump back in, jump around.
We got time. So
yeah, we got time.
These are some of the photos I've pulled aside to edit today. So there's this one in Hong Kong. Yeah, this is the edited version, and the before version looks like this. So I think the light's already kind of nice, but it looks very different to the edit, which I kind of like. This one's in Iceland, so the before. This is why you should shoot raw. So if you have a look at the before, like you can't see anything on him at the moment. So yeah, this was quite a heavy edit to get to this stage.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, so then you have this. I got a comment because I posted all these photos last night to my Instagram, and they were like, "Oh, I really like the way you like separated him, and like, yeah, the light and the shadows, and like, if you have a look at the original version, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like not a fraud, but I feel like I'm cheating a little bit. Like that's the original."
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Like, am I deceiving people by editing so heavy? I don't know. I feel like people like the edit, but yeah, if they see the original sometimes for the heavy edits, it's like completely different photo.
Right.
Yeah. That I edited just in Lightroom pretty much to get to this stage. So I like how there's a separation between him and the background, but yeah. That's all done in Lightroom.
Cool.
Yeah. So then there are some lighter edits. So that's the original. It's not bad, but yeah, I brought out the light rays a bit more.
Is this
the shadows and
is this on a mountain or in a
with a drone with a drone in Shanghai? Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty amazing city. Yeah. I would say it's like you stand there. I think this building here is the second tallest in the world. So when you're standing across like at the Bund, which is like a viewpoint, it looks pretty spectacular. But yeah. The raw and after. If you've ever wondered why or how people get really blue, kind of crystal clear water, I'll show you how to do it later.
Yeah, wow.
This
is
that
another
one of those.
Australia?
Bronte,
yeah.
Bronte Beach.
Cool.
I really miss going out. But yeah.
It'll be there.
So
It'll be there on the other side. It's all good.
Yeah. The panorama I showed you before. So this is a shot with a 16mm lens, which is my widest lens, and it wasn't wide enough for my liking because it's quite enclosed in there. So I stitched a whole bunch of shots together, which ended up looking like that. It's a lot wider. I'll show you how to do that in Lightroom later. Yeah, it's quite. You get some distortion, which is to be expected, but you can fix some of it, and yeah, and yeah, shooting in snow. I've only seen snow maybe like a handful of times in my life, and we were super excited. So, but I hadn't shot in those conditions. It's quite hard to expose for snow. There's a lot of my videos in my vlogs which are all blown out and overexposed because when you look at the screen, everything's just white and you don't know, you can't really judge. So I think that's why a histogram would be useful, especially on the back of a camera when you're shooting. So, I underexposed just to be safe for this one, so it's kind of dark, right? And I wanted to make a moody edit, so
yeah, wow.
I brought it up so it's a bit brighter, and I wanted some drama in the sky, so that's how that looks. But yeah, and those are the photos we can go through today. There's different techniques for each photo. Cool. If you have any questions or you want to,
let's do questions because we're like 20 seconds from our Q&A, so we'll do some questions and then we'll jump in. Let me just see. It's been a lot of chat, a lot of talk about like portrait versus landscape as well. I think Johanna's going to do a straw poll to see who prefers what. It was an interesting comment from Steve before in the chat, just saying, you know, I think for a lot of us, we're used to landscape style, and portraiture really came in with phones, right? Like holding the phone in your hand. It's not much more natural. It's how we scroll. It's now how, you know, a lot of people are navigating. But yeah, Festus was making the point that like a lot of the kids, it's vertical everything, right? It's like TikTok, Instagram, like, you know, it's quite a different world. So do you have a preference? I'm keen to hear what chat thinks as well. Do you have a preference, and do you think that like do you think that the preference should dictate how you shoot?
Going back to that, the kids are born into this world where like that's normal, and we were like when we were growing up, I guess not to date ourselves, right? But like,
Yeah.
I think what's more natural is landscape. So your eyes, what you see is more of a like a landscape crop, I guess.
Oh yeah,
You have
that's
two
true.
eyes, right? So,
Life is
yeah,
landscape.
so it's, basically you don't turn like that, right? So cinema is all formats. It feels more natural that way. But
Mm,
uh, yeah, I've shifted a lot since in the recent days because of mobile and like how we consume media. So I think you just need to don't fight it. There was like a big movement and people getting angry when you shot videos in vertical, and
yeah,
that was a whole thing for a while. But
I
I feel
remember.
like people
Yeah.
are it's slowly becoming not a thing. But
Mm,
like I was saying before, there are photos that are meant to be vertical, and there are photos that are meant to be landscape. So
mm,
yeah, you will know when you look at it. Obviously, I feel like this one, for example, is meant to be vertical. All right, so
right.
wait, let me. It makes sense, right? Because all the lines are running up the tall buildings. If I were to do it landscape, that would not really. I'm gonna do it, and it's gonna look good. All right, but yeah, it's fine, right? I think it's not. This composition is not really a landscape composition. I feel like naturally it should be a vertical, which looks like that.
Mm,
So yeah, have a feel for. I think your intuition will tell you which like what it's meant to be.
mm,
Sometimes it's not clear, and in which case you can shoot both. But if you have the time, definitely do both because you might need it later on. You might want it as your desktop background or whatever, and
mm.
the vertical image isn't gonna look that good. So
Yeah. Yeah. True.
people
Um,
are resistant.
yeah, that's cool. I find it really interesting to talk about this stuff. There was just back onto the presets that we were talking about. Would you recommend using purchased presets to edit your photos? And if so, are there any quality presets you'd recommend to purchase?
uh, so going on the photography community, I've seen like people get pretty divisive on this stuff. So I feel like a lot of people are on one side where they like presets are like you're depriving them of their journey of like figuring it out for themselves, and like that's the whole
Right.
fun part. And but then there are also people who I've spoken to who have bought presets and they've gained a lot of knowledge quicker that way, and they found
Mm,
their own style, but they use that as the base. So um, let me go to where did Lightroom go? Yeah, so if I were to slap a preset, like I don't have any on me now, right? So if I were to hit a preset, it would add all the settings for you.
right. So you can actually
Presets don't
see, you
work
can see
for
what's happening, so you can kind of figure it out a bit more,
yeah,
see what someone else has done.
so yes, so the people I've spoken to who have bought presets who have learned a lot from it, they said they learned a lot because they were like, if you're starting photography, for example, you don't know what a tone curve is, you don't know what white balance does, right? So
Mm,
rather than trying to figure out each thing yourself, like you can see what's like someone who's already has experience and they see what they've done to tweak the image. So for tone curving, for example, right, RGB, you can actually change it to the different like different colors. So if you shift it one way, for example, it'll do one thing, and you shift it, it'll go. So like I don't even use that, but like some people do, and like you can find your favorite creators and use their presets to figure out how they
mm,
reached, say, from this to this. That'll be really confusing for someone who just started, and it
yeah.
helps lessen the barrier. But presets, I think, quite useful, and a lot of people are putting them out. But yeah, I should release some soon, hopefully.
Cool.
Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, should we get into some editing? And
Yeah.
yeah. All right, cool. And we can you can continue to ask questions as we're going along. Some
Yeah.
great chat happening. Have the VSCO film desktop presets. I thought that was just like a phone app. I didn't realize there was a desktop preset.
They made desktop, but they've discontinued them.
Oh,
So
have they?
uh, they created all those presets based on actual film looks. So they would do a lot of research and a lot of test shots to
Mm,
emulate film, and they were like Kodak Portra 400 filters or
right.
whatever. But yeah, the thing with presets is that you might press it onto a photo and it looks like trash. I can show you actually. uh, and then when people buy them and then they're like, this, like, I got ripped off. These don't work for my photos. And depending on the quality and the amount of work and testing that the person's put into the presets, like, it might be their shooting style, you know?
Yeah.
The photo might be different. So for example, this is unedited. If I were to put my, this is the Iceland preset that I saved yesterday just to copy over. If I were to put that onto this photo, it's not terrible.
Kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're I hear what you're saying. It can have like unintended consequences. It's not like you can just put the filter on any style of photo and it suddenly makes it good.
Yeah. So for a preset to work, you need to shoot it in similar conditions and settings to what the creator intended it to be. So I know a friend who he shoots a lot of golden hour shots, and his presets are really good. They're really fine-tuned. But in order to get his look and to benefit from it the most, you need to shoot in like golden hour, like he does. So the oranges will pop more and the shadows will be like how his one looks. But yeah, that's a big kind of asterisk to people looking to buy presets. Find someone you like and someone's photos you really admire, and then if it's worth it to you, then purchase their presets, and then you can. I think the value is in digging through what they've done, not the actual preset. And yeah, eventually I think you should move on from their preset and build your own. But it's a quick way to learn a lot of stuff. So
yeah.
All right, so getting into this photo, I was walking back in Hong Kong to my hotel early morning after a sunrise shoot, and the light was crazy. There's a bit of haze and it was bouncing off this building, and like I had to shoot, right? So the light's pretty good on its own. I kind of like this photo just raw, right? But I wanted to make a contrast between the light and the shadows, like enhance it, I guess. And this is the edit. So as you can see, I added a lot of glow to the light beam, so it's coming down, and the shadows are they're dark, so there's a strong contrast, but they're not so dark that I can't see into like the shadows. People, I think, as a general rule, you should be careful not to. I'll show you. For example, the contrast is a lot stronger now, but like if you look at it, you can't really see. It's like a mask. You can't really see what's under it, right? So be careful about taking away too much detail in the highlights and the shadows. Yeah, let's get started. So first thing I do, crop. I want to crop at 4:5. This was going to Instagram, also a vertical photo, so it's pretty straight already. Demis probably wouldn't agree, but you can always go down to lens corrections is also something I do. So to quickly talk about that, each lens, depending on how wide, so wide would be 50 millimeters and under for full frame sensor. They usually have more distortion. So on the outside, it's usually warped, right? So your camera will embed metadata into the actual file to show you what you shot it on. So I shot this on, if you scroll down to here, it's a shot on Canon EF 24-105. And I can't remember what millimeter I shot it because it's a zoom lens and you can zoom in and out, right? So you click here, you press I twice. So I once will bring up the file name and the date and the resolution. Do it one more time, and then it brings up the actual settings of the camera. Quick way, I don't like leaving it on because then it's distracting. But another way you can check is that you go to the library panel, and then, which is, yeah, it's at the top. So library, you can check all the details here. But yeah, it's good to know what you shot on. So this one, I shot it at 93 millimeters, so it's quite zoomed in. The distortion isn't too terrible, but when you enable it, the camera companies have given like instructions on how to fix distortion for each lens at each kind of focal point. So I usually turn it on. Sometimes I like the effect and I leave it off, but generally I'll turn it on. So chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, cool.
Then to the transform panel, I'll usually just hit auto, see what Lightroom decides is like straight, and if I like it, I'll leave it. So I think Lightroom will look for the majority of the lines and try and straighten the verticals and the horizontals for you. It's done a good job, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Is that
Yeah.
like, does it help when it's like got an image that has a lot of straight lines and things like that compared to, you know, something else that's a bit curvier, like mountains and things like that?
Oh, so I think over here it'll probably look for like the horizon or whatever. So
Right.
we can try it. It's tilted on auto, right? So yeah, you can see what it does. Usually it does the right thing. Sorry, this one. But if it doesn't, in crop mode, you can you pull your pointer to the side. I can rotate it myself, fix it a bit. Maybe not like that. All right, so when you have the crop mode up, you can also use this to slide it to get it right. But if you click this thing, you can actually set the horizon line. So for the horizon, I would probably want that. And
I didn't
that's how
realize
you would
could
straighten
pull that
the
out
horizon.
and kind of click and drag and be like, yo, the horizon's here.
Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
pretty handy.
Yeah,
But
nice.
sometimes you get an image which like the borders of the image actually exceeds it, and you have like a white stripe. Like say if you turn it too much or whatever, and you can fix that by pressing constrain to image. So it'll keep the actual image inside the image.
Yeah.
All right. So
Cool. There was a quick question just about the cropping.
it.
Just wondering, Jan was wondering what your thoughts are on a square crop, like 1-to-1. Do you sometimes do it, and if so, do you take photos with that aspect in mind? Great question.
So when Instagram first launched, you could only post in squares because they wanted to make it like a Polaroid, which came in squares. But as things have changed, I don't use square much anymore. I use 4:5 because it takes up more room on the mobile screen and gives you more real estate to show off your work.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes square works out. Like if you want a balance between what's in the image, you can use square. Like play around. Sometimes I find like panoramic crops which like really zoom in on something. It helps a lot. So it just depends on the image. But mostly the formats I go, if I go crop, these are the standard kind of formats. James was talking about 1x1 square. I usually do 4x5. Landscape, I'll do maybe 2x3, or I'll go like the phone screen cinematic size, which is 16:9. But yeah, you can enter a custom, and 4x5 is great, especially for Instagram. If you want those likes, 4x5 helps a lot, I think. Yeah, so this is the transform panel. I think you can really tell between someone who's edited a lot of photos and like someone starting off by like their lines, and if they paid attention to those details, because it's like one of the first things you learn in photography. Pay attention to your lines. You can use the guided tool. All right, sorry. So it comes like this. It's a little loop, as you can see, and you can say if I want to have it straight by this sign as like I'll press one dot and then I'll go to the other side and then I'll line it up. So that's one line, and you can use another vertical on that side, but for example, I want to use it here. So I'll line it up with the road. And that's one way to straighten it. Especially if images are more complicated, and yeah, when you press auto, it doesn't work immediately. You can always just do it manually, but it's quite handy. It's great for architecture and that kind of stuff. I don't even know if this road is straight. It might be like an uphill, which there were a lot of hills in this area, but for now I'm just going to leave it and assume that it's straight. Yeah, so that looks good to me. From there, I want to move on to white balance. Again, this is my workflow. You might find something that works better for you, but mentally, this is helps me keep in check of what I'm doing. So from there, I wanted to make this a warm image because that's how I remember it was nice golden light, so I don't want to make it too cold, so add a bit of warmth. We can tweak it, come back to it later, but as a general feeling, I think we'll leave it at that for now. I want to blow out the sky and bring out the thing, so I'll bring just, if you don't know what a slider is going to do, I think the best way is just to drag it like crazy, just to see what will happen. And yeah, it's especially for the colors and stuff and the saturation and like, yeah, just drag it all the way just to see. I think I did that for this photo, and I liked how it was kind of blown out here. It feels right. So just, yeah, add a bit of contrast. I want to, now it's nice and bright, but I want to make it a bit darker for the shadows. So I'm going to bring, I think you can either bring the shadows down or the blacks down. So what I do is a combination of both. I'll bring the blacks down just enough, and then I'll bring the shadows up so I don't lose detail. And let's add a tone curve. So these are my 3 presets, which are, they're set to kind of crush the blacks. Some people don't like that, but I do. So tone curve 1 looks like that. Next one lifts the blacks a bit more, so you add a bit more fade. And then the last one is a bit more. So I'm going to go with it full. Yeah, so just to quickly go through it, add some clarity. You can go to the HSL panel, which it helps you adjust colors. So there's hue, saturation, and luminance. Hue is the color, so if you slide the oranges to the left, it goes more pink, and the other way it goes, yeah. So you can just tweak the colors that way. I want to make the light pop and make it a bit more warmer, so I'm going to push that up, the oranges and the yellows. That's in saturation. It shows the strength of the colors, and luminance is how bright the color is. So the more you push it up, the wider it gets, and it kind of loses its color. So if I want to make the oranges more bright, I'll lift it up, but I'll also increase the saturation just a little bit so it matches. Yeah, split toning. A lot of people ask about this, and to be honest, I'm not the best with colors, so just keep that in mind. But basically, it's confusing. So highlights will, this is the hue that you want to add to the highlights. So if you hold on to, option, it shows you what color you're adding in like a very exaggerated form so you can see what you're doing, right? So I don't know, if I wanted to make this like a cool color, I'll go to the blue area, which is around the 200s. But I want to make this warm, so I don't know, maybe around there. I suck with colors, so I try to remember the numbers, if that helps. Yeah, if you don't know what it's going to do, I'm going to push it all the way. You can figure out what you're going to do. I want to say around there. The whole image is kind of washed out with that color. So what you can do to balance that, you can either use the temperature up here to kind of cool it, or make it warmer, whatever you want to do. Or you can use the shadow for split toning to kind of balance it out a bit. So it's very warm, and I want a contrast, a color contrast. So I'm going to add some cooler tones to it. So as you can see, it brings it back into balance, but it doesn't take away the warmth. So if I were to just do that with the temperature slider, it'll make the entire image cooler, which will take away from the warmth of it. So yeah, that's cool. Split toning is important. You can also click this thing to actually like have a visual representation of the colors that you want to pick. For shadows, it's easy to remember 222. That's my number. But there's a balance, so you can shift it left and right for it to be more biased towards one color, like the highlight split toning or the shadow split toning, and it just helps you kind of find that middle ground of where you want it. But yeah, from there you can sharpen. I think I'm not going to touch that for now. I'll show you how I got it to this state. So it's glowing. I think it's important to, when you're editing photos like this especially, it's important to understand light. So the characteristics of light. Yeah. I'm going to reset. So I'm going to show you how to, I made that glow. I'm going to use the radial filter, and I'm just going to reset it for now. Everything's on 0. Basically, you want to make it in the shape of how the light actually was. So it's going to be like that, right? The light was coming in this way. Yeah, so I think I've spoken about this before, but like to make a glowy kind of look, to play around with it, you play with a balance of exposure and highlights. I don't want to blow it up too much that you can't see what's there, so you can control it. So I can make it really bright, and then I can control it with the exposure, or vice versa.
Right.
It gives you
so
a
you're
different
trying
look.
to make sure that you're not losing the information behind.
Yeah. Oh, you can if you want. For this instance, I don't mind too much, right? But you can make it super bright. But if I did it with exposure, it's kind of distracting for the image, right? So I think in photography, your eye usually goes immediately towards the brightest spot of the image. And the brightest spot of the image is up here, which, here and here. And it's kind of distracting. I don't want people to look up there immediately, right? So for this case, I'll up the highlights, and then I'll lower exposure kind of bit. So you can tell it's a lot brighter. I can show you before, after. Done yet though. I'm going to add a bit more warmth to just that section. And then this is the trick to kind of get that glowy look, right? So I'll go all the way. So that's how it looks. You can go all the way. It looks nice and soft, like how glowy light should be, or you can kind of turn it back a bit. The clarity slider is what I usually go to add that soft look, right? So I think you can also do the similar kind of thing with the dehaze. They affect different things, but yeah, they work for this, what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to go with clarity.
While we're doing that, we've got a question from chat. From Jan again. Do you print your work? If so, are there edits or presets that look good on digital screen but might not translate to print? So did print edits have to be made differently?
Yes, I don't print enough of my work. Yeah, I should. It always looks better in print. But there are different ways that you can edit a photo. You need to make sure you're in the right color space for the printer that you're sending it to. So I've sent photos in when I first experimented with printing, and when I got the print back, I was like, hey, this photo looks like trash. Like, why does it look like this? It's because the color space was incorrect, like different to whatever the printer was using, and all the colors came out oversaturated. And I think you need to be careful of the brightness of the screen that you're editing on as well. So when you print it out, like there's no backlight behind the photo to increase it, like depending on how you're viewing it, right? So you need to keep it, I think it's around, you should Google this, I don't do it often, but it's around maybe 60-70% brightness. But there's a perfect brightness for editing photos to have it color accurate. So there's also a sharpening mode. I can show you. So when you're exporting it, you can sharpen for matte paper, for a screen. So screen is digital stuff, right? And yeah, it matters what you're printing on. So matte paper or glossy, and there's a print tab, which I'm not that familiar with because I don't print that often. But yeah, there are more settings and kind of features on fine-tuning your print. If you can see, you can add borders. You can check it out.
Cool.
But with radial filters, right? If you press O, or if you leave it on, hovered over the circle thing, it shows you the areas that are affected. So yeah, you can press O to turn it on, to leave it on. And it's a good way to check. I usually try and feather it a bit. So like, I think it looks kind of stupid if you have it like that, because you can see the outline of your radial filter. And try to keep your radial filters and graduated filters. If people don't know about them, that's better. But if I can tell that you like put a strong vignette and you can see the outline of the radial filter, it's not
Right.
that great. Yeah, keep it natural. So I'll feather it a bit more. Feathering it, as you can see, the outsides will be a bit more gradual, and you can't really see the line. So I think that's too much, but I'm just gonna go just a tiny bit more. And yeah, that's how I added that glow effect. You can add a bit more warmth. I can balance that off. So I've added more warmth and the whole image has warmed up quite a bit. So I can cool it down by adding more split tone. Or like I can go temperature. But one thing, because I did so much negative clarity and the radial filter, it covers that entire zone. The subject walking across the road, it's the main subject, right? So I want to, if I want to bring some clarity back onto her, I can just make another radial filter. You can see she's kind of glowy as well. But to bring some focus back to her, I can just add an amount of clarity to bring it back. And that's how you kind of negate the effect of like that glowy effect. Yeah, but
that's cool.
Generally, that's how the edit goes. I think it's kind of close, right? So over here, because this is such a big part of the image, it's quite dark. So one way to bring it out, you can use it's another filter, but it's like a graduated filter. It's more straight lines, whatever. So when you pull it out, it kind of goes crazy like that, right? But if you want it straight, you hold onto Shift, and then it'll keep it straight for you. Same if you're lifting up vertically as well. But yeah, I can turn it on. So this line here is where it fades, and from this point backwards, it's like starts to get a bit darker, and from here, it's full strength. So that's how graduated filters work. I want to just lift the shadows to make it a bit brighter for the sign. Not too bright that it distracts from the main part of the image, which is over here. Add a bit of saturation. I wanted a bit more gradual, so oh shit. Maybe something like that. It's subtle, but I think little details like this matter.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's one way.
Was saying it's like a film noir movie, like Blade Runner 1925. I like it.
There's one of my favorite photographers. He's Fan Ho, the late Fan Ho. So he shot a lot of photos in developing Hong Kong, and he played with lights and shadows. And I just happened to be in Hong Kong and saw a scene that reminded me of a photo of his. So check his workouts. Definitely one of my favorite street photographers. So.
Oh, cool. Is it FANHO?
Yeah. Yeah, he has a large body of work, and he used to edit quite a bit in the darkroom. So he would like recrop and make things darker, and like he was kind of famous for doing that. But master of light and shadows. So yeah, so that's that edit. Relatively close, a bit warmer, but it's not an exact science. So every time I'll play with things, it usually turns out different. Just have a feel for it, I guess. So do you want to move on to the next photo?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. So cool. Yeah, no, you go for it.
Yeah, if there's any questions, have a look at chat. Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching, and drop them in the comments. But yeah, this was the photo I was talking about before. It's quite a heavy edit. I don't think you can tell immediately. I posted it, and a lot of people were complimenting me on like the use of light and colors. But when you look at the original photo, it looks nothing like that. So this is one way I salvaged this photo. I wasn't that warm on it before, and then I liked his stats, what he was wearing, his suitcase. He's like the perfect character. But there are a lot of things that I didn't like about this photo. Like there's no separation between him and the background. It just looks like one shade. Another thing I've mentioned before, watch the frames of the edges of your frame, sorry. This guy annoys me so much. So one way we can...
This poor guy, he's just trying to go to work. Now he's on blast on Adobe Live on the other side of the world. It's like, I hate this guy.
You can't see him, it's all good. It's anonymous. But be careful for the edges of your frame. it'll drag attention straight out of your image, and
Right.
I want this guy to be the star of this image. So quick way to fix, I'll talk about the rest of the stuff. I don't like that there's a whole bunch of tourists. I want more focus to be just on this guy, so we'll fix that. So first order is to get rid of this guy. Instagram post 4:5, all right? I'll crop it there. You can get rid of him pretty easily. I want it to be something like that. I like the lines in the foreground. I feel like they're quite striking. There's not much color to this image, which I also like. I don't mind. So it's almost monochromatic, but yeah. So as you're paying attention to the actual what's in the image, I think it's pretty important to look at each image and see what there is. Don't try and push it too much, right? So there's a slant of light. I think there's two buildings here originally, and a slant of light was coming through. I want to make the background dark, right? Like that. And because the lights, it's very straight, you can just use a graduated filter. It's quite easy to do. I want the edge to be a bit stronger.
Your comment before about like understanding light, understanding where the light's coming from, and the kind of light, so that you can safely do something like this and it won't look like completely out of pace.
Yeah,
out of place. Sorry.
I've seen people just like add light where it's not meant to be, and it's like sometimes you can get away with it, but like I think subconsciously you just some people know. I know this definitely. All right, so I've skipped ahead of myself, but generally that's you add a graduated filter. But first, let's get into the actual edit. So if you're looking at the tonal values of this image, it's very monochromatic. There's dark parts and very bright parts, right? So I want to accentuate all that. So increase. Sorry, my computer's not catching up. Right, so increase shadows, contrast. Easy way to do, you can darken it like that, right? I've darkened the shadows and I made it kind of more exaggerated than I'd usually edit it, but we can kind of bring it back in because I want to bring out the contrast in the image. I've darkened the shadows, which you lose all his jacket detail, and it's right now, if I turn the clipping on, it's just all black, which we can kind of fix later. I'll show you how to do that, but for now, let's leave it at that. I like how this kind of looks, right? So I'm going to use a tone curve preset. So I'll just hover over. You can hover over your presets. That's to preview them. So when my computer catches up. All right, so this is the Iceland preset on this, which looks like trash, right? But I'm going to... All right, so that's tone curve 1, bit more fade, too much fade. So because there's a lot of shadows in this image, maybe let's go with the middle one. Yeah, let's add a bit more. I want it to be a bit cooler. And then I'm gonna go and add my split tone. I don't really want to change the highlights for this one, so I'm just gonna add a bit of blue. It's a bit too much, so I can play with this to even it out, the temperature. And the more blue you add, you can kind of play with that color a bit. So I'm gonna go hue to make it a bit more greeny. Pump it up a bit there. So it's already looking quite different.
Yeah.
Before, after, but I want it to be a bit more. So I'm going to add a graduated filter. As you see, if I darken it, right, that's too much. It needs to look natural. Don't make it look like it's...
Yeah.
I guess you could, like if it's an art piece or whatever you want, but for this case, I want it to be natural. So I'm going to darken it. You can always like tweak these later after using it. But as you can see, it was quite easy to do because the lines are straight, but like his head's in shadow, which doesn't make sense because he's in the light, right? So one way you can kind of get rid of that. So that's what it's affecting. So if I'm in the the graduated filter right now. You can go to the brush, and you can actually hold on to Option, and it changes to minus, and you can actually get rid. That's a bit strong. You can actually get rid of the filter on him.
Oh, cool.
So yeah.
So what did you do? What did you do to bring that so you can paint back in there?
All right. So let's go back a few steps. All right, I'll take it a bit slower. Sorry. So that's what it's affecting. This is the filter. So I've got it selected here. You go to brush, and then when you click brush, it'll bring up a brush. Its default is set to add. You see the plus on the cursor, but if you hold Option, you can get rid of it.
Right.
So if you want to change your brush settings for the minus, you need to hold on to Option and then change. I'm going to add a bit more feather, maybe.
Cool. I like it.
Yep. Z for zoom in. Over here, sometimes, depending on how big your screen is, maybe you might need more, but right now it's set 1:1. You can make it even more. And if you click that, you can go all the way in, but let's not. We don't have enough time to get that accurate, but let's stick with 1. All right, so I'm holding onto Option, just paint it away on him. I have auto mask on. So auto mask is it's like a cheat. You know when you were a kid and you had to color in coloring books?
Yeah.
Auto mask helps you color in between the lines, basically. So
man, I needed that when I was a kid.
Yeah, kids have it easy these days using all these tools, right? But it'll help you more or less kind of keep in the lines. I think it detects like where the hard edges are. So tip is to make your brush smaller for as you get closer to the edges so you can be more accurate. But just quickly do it now. If you were to turn auto mask off, and then it's just like just a straight brush, so it's not very intelligent. So sometimes like you're painting over something and with the brush and it doesn't work because you have auto mask on because it's detecting something. So you turn it off and then you can do stuff manually.
Right. Like, is that why around the hand you kind of went over the hand, but it refused to rub it out then?
Yeah, see, it's detecting the edges of him. You see how the highlights on his thing, it's not going. If you want to get rid of it, I think let's leave it for now. That's just an example. Turn it back on. All right, so this is a rough job. Normally I'd spend more time doing this, but let's have a look. All right, so I pressed O to get it to stay red. So if I were to not have it on O, like you can't really see what you're painting, but yeah. Press O to turn it on so you can see what you're doing. Sometimes I might be like that. I've painted too much, right? So you can just go and add it back in or just undo. I like undoing because yeah, it's more accurate.
Yeah.
Let's just go with that for now. I think a bit of his head's. All right, so now he's out of the shadow, and the back's still kind of it's darkened. Great. So I can delete the. You can press H. Say if I have a whole bunch of these filters, they have the dots on it, which can be distracting. If you press H, it hides them, but then sometimes like you forget they're there because they're hidden. So just be careful with hiding your filters. All right, so that's how it looks. I'll delete it and undo so you can see the difference. So that's before, that's after. Adds that bit of subtlety.
Yeah.
Like I was saying before, his jacket's completely like black now. It's clipping, so maybe it's not clipping, but I want more detail regardless. So I'll put a radial filter. Just like that. Be subtle. You can bring out it's kind of going around him now, so you can make it a bit smaller and feather it a bit more. But there, I brought out some detail back in his jacket. If you wanna, I think I did this in the original, but make it the shape of his face. You can draw more attention to his face by doing a radial filter, make it a bit brighter, move it a bit further up, and I don't know if you want to add a bit more color to your subject's face, or like maybe deset it to make it match. I think a bit more warmth will help. Yeah, so that's how you kind of bring stuff back into attention.
That's awesome. I really like that. There was a question in chat. What country would you love to do a photo series of next? Yeah, where's your next trip?
After all this time at home, I want to.
Yeah.
I think New Zealand's. It was on my cards before all this stuff kicked off, but yeah, New Zealand's looking like the next one. So
nice.
Hopefully they open up borders. But I want to do more nature stuff because I'm kind of I want more nature in my life at this stage.
Yeah.
Being inside, no sun. I'm so pale. I don't know if you all the highlights on my face you can see. But
that's cool. I'm in the pale club. Yeah,
maybe
Steve in chat could Steve's from New Zealand. Maybe he could give us
nice.
He could give you a tip on where to go.
Let's go on a hike, Steve. I want to do South Island and do all of that, but yeah, potentially Australia, New Zealand. We can travel relatively soon, so I'm trying to plan for that.
Cool.
But New Zealand looks very beautiful. All right, so back to the image. Her bag is annoying me. The color it's popping out, it distracts on the image quite a bit. Like I don't mind her being there because it's not an empty city. Ideally, there'd just be no one but him. But one way, quick and easy way to lessen the effect of her bag, radial filter over it, deset it, and maybe bring the highlights down a bit. Because I'm not affected. If I were to like make it dark, that would look kind of silly, right? So because I'm desaturating it and there's not much color there anyway, that's it's not too terrible. The highlights, I'm making it shine a bit less, and I feel like that's a lot less distracting than if I were to delete it and it's like you have a nice colorful bag in the back of what is like a mostly monochromatic image. But yeah, keep distractions. Depending on what you're trying to achieve, yeah, you should keep an eye on it. These road markings annoy me a bit, so... sorry, I pressed... maybe I'm going too fast. So this is the spot removal tool, which is Q. If you hover over each item, you can see the shortcuts. But yeah,
there was just a quick question just about before with the girl with the bag. Would you ever remove the people completely in Photoshop?
Yeah, I've done that quite a few times. For this one, you'd have to rebuild it. So there's like a pattern to her. I don't think it'd be difficult. You could definitely get rid of her. Yeah, it's up to you. I've done it quite a few times before, but I'll leave her there for now.
Cool.
I'd take that over to Photoshop. We can try. We can try with the spot removal and see what happens. But yeah, see. So even if I try to do it manually and move it, so with spot removal, you can adjust where it's sampling from. Yeah, if you really wanted to try and get it matched up, you can also adjust the feather. All your settings are over here. So there's clone and then there's heal. So I think heal is a bit more intelligent, whereas clone is just like exact copy for copy. But a task more suited for Photoshop, I feel.
Yeah.
This one, for example, is quite simple. Make my brush a bit smaller.
Yeah, Festus was asking,
Yeah.
what are those road stains?
Oh, I think they spray paint, I don't know, markings. You can see another tip for moving around an image when you're zoomed in. So if I zoomed in and if I were to click and drag, I'm on a tool and you don't want that, right? So hold spacebar, it turns into a hand and then you can just drag, right? So they're road markings. I think they do it everywhere. They spray paint. I don't know. I don't know what they mean, but there's a. I think in my edit, I took it to Photoshop. So this is a basic edit for what we did, but I took it to Photoshop and I got rid of the manhole
Yeah.
and all those spots.
I think that might
I had a bit more time.
It might make Jan happy in chat. The manhole was
cleaner image, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How I did that in Photoshop, just rebuild it. The lines are quite straight. It's quite simple. If it was more complicated, it would take a lot more time to rebuild. But clone stamping and spot removal. But yeah, that's this image.
Yeah, cool.
You can bring life to images that you maybe missed the first time, and this is one of those examples. So yeah, I got a lot of good feedback from this one. So. I like it. Drop any questions. We can move on to something else.
Yeah, we've probably got time for one more. I think, yeah, this edit will be awesome to see. Yeah, we probably got about, 41, about 15 minutes left until our cutoff. So a quicker edit and and a great kind of last call for any more questions for today.
Instead of actually you watching me edit it, I can just like reverse engineer the edit, so I can go into it and I'll show you what I did. So nice. This one was a strong edit. I feel like I didn't mind it like this, but feels like it's turning a light switch on basically. And I was able to do this because I shot in RAW. I feel like if I shot JPEG, it wouldn't have turned out the same because the conditions were a bit more difficult to shoot in. He was strongly backlit. So the light source, the sun's there, and then he's just completely in silhouette. Like you can't see anything. So I wanted to save it, and I lifted the exposure quite some. So it's like 1.7.
Is this an actual person standing on an actual like rock, or is this?
Shout out Jonah Gray. He climbed up there. So
cool.
Yeah, he came with me on our road trip to Iceland.
Nice.
He's got really good work. If you're into After Effects, you should check out his work. But yeah, so I brought that up quite a bit. It's too bright now. The moodiness is kind of gone. I brought up the shadows quite a bit. So one way to bring the moodiness back to it after you up the exposure quite a bit, right? Radial filters. So I shouldn't point the screen. So the radial filter is in this shape because I want the focus to be in this area of the image. I don't mind this top part or the bottom. So what I did for this radial filter, I'll delete it to show the settings are here, but if I delete it, you can see what happens, right? So without it, it looks like that. So it's quite bright, but it's almost like a vignette, adds some more moodiness to it and draws attention back to where I want them to look, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 radial filters plus the edit on top. So this one was quite a strong edit. I can go through the radial filters. So this one, subtle, but I wanted to brighten it just a little bit.
Just a couple of questions. I thought I might just throw them in just in case we do run out of time. What lenses would you recommend for an all-purpose photographer using a Sony A7 III? That's very specific. I don't know if you'll be able to answer that.
No, so that's a full frame camera. So it's the same sensor size that I'm using, which he'll be using the same kind of focal length. So I would say 24 to 70. It's great walk around lens. So that's what I shot this with. So 24 is quite wide. It's not the widest, and 70 is enough to do like portraits or zoom ins or whatever. So I shot this at 47 mil. It's in the middle of the range, I guess. So if you're using a crop sensor, which is like these numbers might be a bit different. So instead of 2470, it might be, I'm really bad with maths, but you can look it up, it'll be different. Yeah, 2470 or 24105. But
cool.
I always have this lens attached, so
it's great.
I think it'd be my desert island.
Well, we're on. Oh, the one lens you would take on a desert island. That's cool. Yeah. I like that. Quick, another one. Do you heal clone in Photoshop before doing the Lightroom edit, or after the Lightroom edit?
So my workflow, I know people who, let me get out of this radio. They right click and you can bring it into Photoshop. Yeah, I don't do this. I feel like I want to nail the color grade first and then start manipulating. But I know Demis, he does a lot more heavier stuff. And so he'll export it to Photoshop, do all the stuff, and then bring it back into Lightroom to add more grade to it.
Yeah.
It moves it to a DNG file, which I feel like you don't get the full benefits of RAW.
Right.
It's just my opinion, I guess. But I'll nail the grade first, and then go to Photoshop to get rid of stuff. So I think in the photo, I got rid of his jacket. He had a yellow jacket here, so I got rid of that, and I cleaned it up. There's a little tuft of grass that I got rid of. Yeah, find what works for you. If you have a heavy Photoshop workflow, you're probably better off doing what Demis does. So bring it into Photoshop mid color grade or before you do it. But yeah. Yeah, so I put a radial filter on him. Light tweaks just to kind of bring him back into focus. It's very light. I up the shadows just so he's a bit more brighter. All right, so here, this one, it's the glow technique that I used in the Hong Kong one. So this is the main light source. I wanted to make it soft, and I upped the exposure this time and lowered the highlights to make it glow. So if I delete it, it's like that. But I like how there's a lot of the glow on the actual rock. That's only there because it's actually there in the image. If it wasn't there in the image and you did that, it wouldn't show up like that. But
right.
Yeah, I like that the edge of the rocks are glowing. Negative clarity, added some warmth, upped exposure, and then to balance the bright exposure, I pulled the highlights all the way back down. And I did the same thing over here, but to a slightly lesser extent. And the same here to give this side of the rock some glow as well, some glow and some light. So delete it and undo. So that's how it looks. And I like that I kept the detail of like the sand, but I didn't want it leading all the way into the image. So that's where this helps. So there's detail, but then there's some kind of vignette and there's a gradual fade off into darkness. The last radial filter I did was up here. I just wanted to bring some emphasis to a gap in the clouds and made it a bit brighter, made it a bit cooler so it contrasts with the bottom part, and I upped the clarity to bring out the texture in that gap. But yeah, basically like if I reset it, it's like turning a light on and off.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy what you can do in Lightroom. So
yeah, it's such a it is quite a dramatic edit, but it's so nice. Like it looks like it's kind of been like more like a painting, like where the light has kind of painted the side of the rock, like an artist's interpretation.
Iceland, I feel like they're so far north that the quality of their light is very different to what I've shot in other places of the world.
Really?
So I think it makes a difference. Yeah.
Wow.
It was so saturated one day, like during golden hour, that like everything was like yellow and orange. Nothing like we get down here. But
what's
interesting.
What times?
Where you are.
What times are the golden hours in Iceland? It'd be different, right?
Depending on the time of year. So if you go during summer, apparently like you can. I saw some guy on his Instagram stories. He was in a hot tub at 1 a.m. and it looked like 4 p.m. It's so bright.
Right.
And then you can also have like winter, which is like you get like 6 hours of daylight. I think it gets completely pitch black dark at like 4 p.m. or 3 p.m.
Wow.
And it gets depressing, is what I hear. But
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, I'd love to shoot there during. I'd love to shoot there during summer, so you can shoot for like 14 hours straight.
Wow, it's a big day.
And not have to worry about light. Yeah, you probably pass out if you shot for too long and didn't notice. But yeah, any questions, guys?
Yeah, there was one. So we've only got about 5 minutes left, actually. So probably one question, maybe one more. Jan was just saying the issue that is having is if I want to redo my Lightroom edit with a different color grading, I have to do the cleanup in Photoshop all over again. So any kind of tips?
Yeah. I have to do it all over again. I don't Photoshop too heavily, so it's not that big of a concern for me. But
Right.
sometimes I have to go back, and the images might not be exactly the same. So if you do a lot of printing and Photoshop work, so yeah, you should probably find a better workflow. But I try to keep Photoshopping to a somewhat of a minimal.
Right.
I'm not going to say none because I'll get caught out on it. But yeah, as a photographer, I want to show what was there and not have something fully out of place. But yeah, depends on where you stand on that.
Cool.
I use Photoshop a lot. I've been on these streams before, and you've seen that I've removed things, and
I'm like, I've got evidence of you using Photoshop for sure. But it makes sense. Like we did have Demis on. Demis was on very recently, and he does a lot of heavier Photoshop editing. So I guess in contrast to Demis on the scale, you use it a lot less. So I guess that kind of, to kind of qualify the question, it really will depend on the type of photo, right? Like it's going to depend.
I posted some of my photos to Reddit, and some of them get so angry when they find out you Photoshop. This is not a real photo. It's like, man, I removed one smudge, and it's like, I'm not a photo. I think in photography, if you're a photojournalist, like you're not allowed to touch the scene at all. You maybe just like correct the light a tiny bit, but like you get called out because your images are being used to portray like a world event or whatever. They have to be accurate. Yeah. But I'm not claiming to be a photojournalist, and I feel like the line, it depends on where you stand. Demis had a photo where he put a plane in a forest, which wasn't real, and people got so angry, or some people got so angry, and some people didn't care. It's like it's Instagram, it's fine, right?
There was a question from Jose. What about the clear blue water edit? Yeah, we did have that as a plan of something that we could do, but we've only got 3 minutes, so we probably don't have time for that. Ben, maybe we'll have you back on.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I think because that's a really interesting area to cover, because like that is popping, like the blues, like popping so much.
To be fair, they paint the actual actual pool like from time to time, so it does get like quite bright and clear like that. But when I first figured this out was when I first got a drone, and like I figured out how to change the watercolor, and then like everyone started doing it, and now it's like it's hard to believe if the watercolor is actually what it is in photos, but sometimes it is. But, yeah, you can make your water pop.
Okay, cool. Well, maybe we can cover that. We'll cover that in a future stream. We'll have a chat about that.
Awesome.
But that's super cool. So we've only got like a minute left. Can we just have a quick another look at maybe some of the things where people can find out more about you as we say our goodbyes?
Yeah, so find me on Instagram. I'm posting a vlog every week of my 30 days in Japan, so we're up to episode 9 next week. 8 was released this week. You can find me on 529 Podcast. I host it with Demis. Let me read this. A podcast about creators for creators living the 529 life. So,
good job.
yeah, we've had a lot of guests. Yeah, a lot of cool guests on there, and we talk about everything creative and the struggles and the good parts, I guess. So find us there as well. So.
Yeah, awesome.
Season 2 is launching soon.
Season 2 launching soon. That's been great. And thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning. Chat, you've been awesome. Thank you for the banter, and thank you for all the questions. There were some great questions in there. And we'll see you soon. We'll have Itchban back on very soon. Thank you, Ben. Thanks for your time.
That went quick.
It did.
See you guys.
See ya.